Just like what we did with the entities, the same approach can be used when creating the repository classes. And that is by grouping and extracting common functions into their own abstract classes. For repositories, we just have to follow what we did with the entities. That means we will have an abstract repository class for each abstract entity. How does that look? Let's take a look at our category repository class. It's extending a business entity, which is parameterized by category, the entity it's managing, and string, the primary key type of the entity. Going up, we have enable repository, auditable repository. We can define functions here. And finally, the base repository, which extends the JPA from Spring. Now we have our entities and repositories in place. But take a look at the packages. Did you find anything unusual? Yes. The main Spring Boot class is in com.terrawars package, but we have entities and repositories in com.broodcamp. By Spring standard, it will only load the classes from the package and sub-packages where the main class is defined. Therefore, we need to tell Spring to scan the com.broodcamp package as well. That can be done by annotating the main class with @component_scan, @entity_scan, and enable JPA repositories. The first two are non-trivial annotations, so we will just check why we need to specify a repository base class and the repository factory bin class. Parameters in enable JPA repositories annotation. First, let's take a look at why we need to define a custom base repository implementation class. So let's open this class. It extends Spring's simple JPA repository and implements our base repository interface, which overrides the save method. Why? This is where one of our abstract classes fits in. Whenever we save an entity that extends an auditable entity, we may want to save the timestamp as well as the currently logged user. So we have this instance of check and then get the name of the user from the injected current user. However, it's not that simple. It's unfortunate, but AutoWire doesn't work in this place. And that is why we need to define a custom repository factory bin class. This one. There are methods of interest here. The get repository base class, which returns our custom base repository implementation, and the get target repository. Now, what is Spring Context Utility? It implements application context aware, which notifies the instance of this class via the set application context of the application context it runs in. This is where current user injection in the base repository implementation class is enabled. So this injection, and in this line, injection is enabled. And that is how we can get the current user.name property in this class, in a base repository implementation class. You can override other methods as well and implement depending on your requirements. In our next video, we will create tests for our repository classes. Again, this is Edward, and thanks for watching. I hope you learned something from this lecture. I am constantly updating the Git repository, so you might want to check it out and play around. Thank you.